Direct from Montreal, Canada, this is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
We are speaking with the one, the only Mike Tramp, live from Denmark. Where, by the way, in Denmark are you? Copenhagen?
Somewhere where no one can find me.
I actually have family in Copenhagen and Aarhus and Solvang. That's where our family is.
I'm somewhere in between.
Yeah, you're somewhere on the map there. But as we say in Montreal, bonjour, welcome. Lots of great stuff to talk about today.
That's always good. Then we don't have to create or make up something.
No, and we are recording this on March 2nd, 2020, and of course, March 2nd is Bon Jovi's birthday, Jon Bon Jovi's birthday. Did you, by any chance, ever tour with them or do anything with Bon Jovi?
Well, no to the first question, yes to the second question. Actually, I've been to a lot of Jon Bon Jovi shows in the 80s, and several times John invited me up to sing the encore with him, and actually one time coming back from Australia, I think it was January 1989. On my birthday, he was playing Hawaii, and I was stopping, in Hawaii on my way to LA, and we went to the show, and John invited me up and sing with him, and it's all good memories.
It is. Now, before we get over
John.
Yeah, happy birthday to John. Before we get over to Second Time Around, which is the new album, just staying with the Jon Bon Jovi thing, how important was he for what you ended up doing? Because with Def Leppard and Bon Jovi sort of exploding the scene, I guess at some point, and I don't want to say White Line followed them necessarily, but you were part of that same scene that they sort of helped develop and forge forward. Is that fair to say?
Oh, it's completely fair to say. I mean, that would be, you would be a complete idiot to deny those things. We were watching Bon Jovi and his, Slippery When Wet album and the great videos that came off that. It kind of became really something you try to match because it was really done all the way around very well. The songwriting, the video, the live shows, the whole thing, so he was in many ways a front runner, they're together with Van Halen and Motley Crue, and like you say, Def Leppard. Those were the big acts that exploded at that time, and you molded you around that.
Yeah, you did. Did the record company ever come to you when you put out Wait, or the first album, Pride, I should say, and say, hey, we need you to sound more like what Bon Jovi or Def Leppard's doing? Or did they sort of have a feeling that, okay, we just need to fit this mold and let's get them there?
Well, here's the truth, and somehow it's a great question because I actually wished that the record company would have shown that kind of detailed interest in the band. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that likes to take advice from anyone, but if you have someone that's actually asking you or telling you maybe you should be doing stuff like that, Atlantic Records were almost following behind what the band were doing, and at times, which has been said before, both by Vito and I, had given up on the band before Wade even had its fair run. And it was only really because of a radio station in Minneapolis that suddenly got enormous response when they played the song, that this song ever got a chance. And then after that, everything just became, the snowball effect. But no, our record company never came with any form of ideas or things like, which you have heard, of course, from some of the other bands, or the legendary The Making of Pump album. You see the involvement of the legendary John Kalotner, A&R guys of all A&R guys. Jon Bon Jovi listened a lot to John Kalotner. We did not have a John Kalotner in our career, and at times both Vito and I said, "Man, I wish we had some serious feedback so we kind of could, test ourselves if we're making the right decision."
And well, the positive thing, at least you weren't on MCA, the big rock horror stories are for anybody on MCA. So, all right, so let's get to Second Time Around. Now, this gets released on May 1st, the same night that you will be at the M3 Festival. So hopefully you'll have a box of CDs for fans to buy and get signed and all that stuff. But talk to me about Second Time Around. You're sort of reimagining some songs, or are these the same songs you released previously and just are brushing them up with some studio magic, or are they brand new reimagined versions?
Well, a bit of both and
Okay.
everything in between. A lot of these songs never got a chance to be released outside Denmark, and in a very, very small amount on another album called the Rock and Roll Circus. And it sort of just got pushed aside. And but there were songs that once I started, from time to time, fans were asking, why can't we get this album? And whenever I went in and listened to this album, there were songs I really were missing in my live show. They're some of the best songs that I feel that I've written. Of course, you could say that about every album, but it's just when I went back in and started digging up some of the different recordings I'd done with it, opened up the files, deleted a few things, made some edits here and there, just because now it's 10 years later. It is as current as the last album is, and which I have said probably in every interview that I've done, if I'd gotten a chance, that you can basically pick any Mike Tramp album, and besides the haircut on the cover of the album, the songs could be on any of the different albums, because I only write one way, the way I write, and I don't write to try to fit into a time period. I don't try to fit into what the radio's playing now. I understand that the game these days are only so big. Therefore, what matters most is that I always remain true to myself.
Yeah, and well, okay. So let me ask you this: speaking of White Line, you look back at these songs, you felt that some of them needed to get a little polish and get re-released. Do you feel the same way about some of the White Line songs? Because some of the production was over the top, some of the guitar solos, some of the way it was very 80-ish. Would you like to go back and do a second time around for the White Lion songs a la Mike Tramp 2020, 2021?
No, not at all, because that is a completely different decade. Like I said, I can go back to my first solo album in 96. And even though maybe the overall production, maybe probably the mastering of the first couple of solo albums might not be sounding the same as the last ones, to some of the fans, it's still their favorite solo albums, and I represent myself on all my solo albums, on an equal level. Once you go back to 1984, the first White Lion album, I'm 24 years old, and that is a completely different world. It is all, I think a lot of times when we talk about this, and I'm sure, when you talk about with similar artists like myself, the whole world was a different place. Everything was different. Technology was different. Recording technology was different. The record company was different. Radio was booming. MTV was on fire. Nobody had thought about making reality shows or the making of Vince Neil or the making of Gene Simmons. Nobody had thought about that. People were just enjoying rock and roll in its pure form. Most lead singers were still able to sing the songs.
Yeah, they were. And they also had this great technology called the...
I cannot go back to White Lion and redo anything, and which I've said on every time you and I do an interview together. I cannot be Mike Tramp, 27 years old, in 2020. It is impossible. And guess what? I also don't want to.
Right. Nor should you. And I was just gonna say, the great technology back then was the Linn drum. We need to go back to the Linn drum. We need to bring that back.
But that's kind of like making a Halloween party and everybody comes dressed like the 70s. And then when the party's over, they get home, and next day they wake up, they go back to work, and it was just, it was an evening.
It was a great evening. All right, so now that you've done this album and it's going to come out on May 1st, second time around, where do we go from here? Was that sort of putting a period at the end of the sentence saying, okay, these songs didn't get the attention, I want to give them a second life? Do you go back on the next release and look at some other songs, Freak of Nature and stuff, and say, okay, I polished those one up? Or is it like, okay, great, now clean slate, move forward, next album is 10 brand new songs written, in the summer of 2020?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I can't touch anything that's White Lion. White Lion was White Lion. It's the four of us. It's the sound of the four of us playing together. That will be signed and sealed in a time capsule. The same thing goes with Freak of Nature. I only touch what is Mike Tramp's. And I know that I possibly would have said this last time we spoke or something like that, that now with 12 solo albums of original composed songs by me, it is a lot of songs. It is a lot of songs. There are some big bands, historical great rock and roll bands in history that haven't even made 5 albums. So I'm almost getting to the point where would I be going next? These days, when I record an album, I think it's really just more about that I have the music and I have the songs inside of me. I don't have a record company that's calling me every day saying, we really need to get a new album out. I don't have the entire world crying out and says, man, we simply cannot get out of bed before there's a new Mike Tramp album. It's simply because the music inside me and within my own studio and some friends around, it's fairly easy to do a new album. And I'm also very confident in what I do because I only aim to be the best of me. Now, all that being said, and coming with second time around now, I can only imagine that it'd be a long time before I would come back with new music. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't be coming some other kind of thing, because after all, this is my business, and I have to, have products when I'm touring and things like that. But no.
Well, yeah, you do have to have product when you're touring. So let's quickly talk about touring. May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd is the M3 Festival in Columbia, Maryland. I will be there. You will be there. The Killer Dwarves, Rat, a whole bunch of bands will be there. Talk to me about the importance of those kinds of festivals for you to present your music, but also for you to further the business, because it does gather 15, 20,000 fans that like this kind of music. It exposes them to your new music, to your new stuff. Just talk to me a little bit about the importance of M3.
Well, I mean, first of all, for the last 5 or 6 years, so many people have asked why I'm not on M3. Well, now I am. It's very important. It's rock. It's our last stand. Monsters of Rock Cruise, M3 Festival. Those are still very important things for bands that were part of the 80s and that time period. It's a gathering of people that love that rock and roll from that time. So I'm delighted to be part of that. I'm always delighted to come out there and play my own little show the way I now do it for the people. I have so many friends from around the country that supports my music. It's not even a band in front of an audience anymore. It's an artist joining with some people that love the music the same way. We don't have that big wall between us anymore. Like you said, after the show, you find some kind of corner where you can take pictures and sign your album, sell some T-shirts, say hi to some people that said, hey, man, I got married to White Lion, Still Death Do Us Part, all those kind of things. And you just know that by the end of the day, you made a lot of people happy.
Yeah, you really did. And you know, I'll say this about that festival and also the Monsters of Rock cruise is that unlike other festivals, it really has become a family gathering. You look at some of the other bigger festivals and it's very competitive. My band has to blow this band off the stage, and you don't get that at Monsters of Rock. You don't get that at M3. It really is a whole bunch of people my age and younger that come in and just say, hey, I just want to celebrate this music. And the bands also want to celebrate their fans. Like you said, there's no wall. There's no like, oh, I'm Mike Tramp and you're Mitch. You stand. There's none of that. And it's like, oh, thank God. That's what's fun about that festival.
Yeah. No. You know, you actually wish there were more, you know, around the country. So, you know, because it's a limited amount of people that can come to Southern Columbia, Maryland, you know, if you live in North Dakota or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I gotta convince the guys over there, Eric Baker and stuff, to start doing an M4 and an M5 and an M6, you know, a little bit like in San Diego, Montreal, etc. Anyway,
all those we can do the reunion of M3.
The M3 reunion. Now we have in the last few interviews sort of stayed away from the White Lion story because it's been told. Why? Why do we stay away from it? Because, well, like I said, it's been told, but today we said, okay, we're gonna dig in a little bit. So,
especially because this tour is called Mike Tramp, The Songs of White Lion, and there isn't really an interesting story behind. I mean, first of all the people that have seen my last 6 North America tours know that 50% of my set has always been classic White Lion songs. Now I bet, and if you could see my entire little room here, my memory room, every single poster, and I probably have about 250 of those A3 posters that I get from every venue and things like that. There's not a single poster that doesn't say the voice of White Lion or something with White Lion. This time I'm just basically beating the venue owner to the game, and therefore it's the songs of White Lion, you know. And it's a 2-hour, 100%, you know,
extravaganza.
You know, and I have my great friend and a phenomenal guitar player, Marcus Nan, with me. We got a little bit of a very cool little drum beat behind us to make it cool. But it's great venturing into some of these old classic songs, and to me, performing in them this way keeps it interesting for me. I cannot sit here and confirm that I would ever play the songs with a full band, but I feel all right playing them this way.
Okay, so we've touched upon a little bit before, so let's just do it for today. Why not? You built this catalog of songs. You've just said promoters like to put the voice of White Lion. White Lion is a brand, much like Pepsi or Coca-Cola or Ford. Why not just say, I'm White Lion? You go to M3 and you get the headline slot as White Lion. You throw in 3 or 4 ghosts in the back that nobody cares about, and just say, hey, I'm White Lion. Screw you, Vito.
But everybody knows I'm not White Lion, and I've been the first one to go out there and say, when I did this little run that started out as Tramp's White Lion, and with a little bit of misguidance by an attorney and somebody I shouldn't be listened to, I tried actually to take on the White Lion name, only to end up in an unnecessary lawsuit with Vito. When all that was over and the smoke had died down, you know, I realized, number one, I didn't want to do it this way. I didn't want to be out there because I never felt like White Lion. It was just an easy way to somehow book the shows. But there were much more pain than pleasure with doing this. And for a while, you know, the thing between Vito and I, you know, was just sort of like an unnecessary mess. We finally cleared it up, and here over the past many years, you know, whenever we talk, you know, we just understand that there's only a White Lion when Vito Bratta and Mike Tramp James Lomenzo and Greg D'Angelo are together, and that will never happen. So you will also not see a White Lion banner on stage and me in front.
Well, now, have you since then or recently spoken to Vito, and do we know exactly why he has left the rock world?
No, I would, and I should be, if anyone should be able to answer that question, it should be. I spoke to Vito last year while I was on the road in the U.S. I'm coming into New York this time again. I will once again attempt to have a rendezvous with him. It won't be on stage, but maybe it will be somewhere over a meatball sandwich somewhere in Brooklyn.
Do you? And I know you've been asked this a million times, but do you know why he quit? Did the business just sort of screw him over so badly that he said, "Fuck this! I'm not dealing with this crap anymore"?
I don't know if it's the business screwed him over. I just think that he just chose to follow his feelings. I have expressed many times that every second day, I also feel like throwing not the towel in the ring, but just saying, I'm done. Because once it doesn't, I mean, first of all, it doesn't necessarily make sense in the same way it made sense in the old days where we really saw a great reward. This time, the reward is actually the friendship and the gratitude I get from the 50 to 350 people that come see me. That is the reward that, and almost like, some sort of, I'm going on the road to say hi to some of my old friends. And, when I come home, I can still pay the rent for half a year or something like that. But there's no glory anymore. There's no goal to reach anymore, So everything has to be 100% about how you want it to be.
Yeah, it really does. All right, so let me ask you then quickly, Fight to Survive, the very first album. Talk to me a little bit about coming over to the U.S., coming over to New York, and reestablishing yourself as an artist on this side. You had some success in Denmark with, of course, Mabel and some of that other stuff. What was that like coming here? And were you satisfied with the first album? Because there are some great songs on it, but it does seem to, and I don't want to put it down because I love the album, but it's not as slick as Pride. Let's put it that way.
It was something completely different. Every step, probably the first couple of years, probably even up until we went into the studio to re-record Pride in January of 1987, every step that I took every single day was a learning step, was something new, something that I'd never done before. It also worked for Vito, but Vito had grown up in the USA. I grown up he had grown up in the country of rock and roll, man. Not that England isn't rock and roll, but the way we wanted it to be. So as much as I thought I knew it all, I actually knew nothing. So everything became an experiment. It's funny that you mentioned this thing about Fight to Survive, because Vito and I had a really, really hard time finding two other guys to fit how we wanted to build the band. And we actually sort of gave in and compromised when Vito's friend Nicky Capozzi came in to play the drums. He was a phenomenal drummer, but did not fit the band in any way. And then, we also could not find a bass player. And then somebody suggests Felix Robinson, which was the second bass player from this band, Angel, which we both had liked in its original form. And so, we're so dying to get on with this thing that this becomes the band. And Vito and I at that time had written half the Fight to Survive album, and we write half of the album now with Felix and Nicky, and we go to Frankfurt, Germany, and record that album. And that album, from recording that album to 3 years later when we record Pride, so much happens in rock and roll. If you went back and say, what happened from 84 to 87? it would be massive amount of bands and new things happen, stuff like that. And which one of those things influenced both Vito and I in direction and things like that, So Fight to Survive is a very, very dark album, incredible dark album. And which is why it succeeded first in Japan and then became the underground album of Europe, France, Germany, England, and worked its way up there and became an import back to America. I mean, this is a whole nother chapter, but there's a lot in that album that is completely the opposite of recording the Pride album and writing the Pride album.
It is. All right. So you said that you were having a hard time finding members that fit the vision that you and Vito had. What was the original vision? Did you want to be more like because you're looking at 83, 84, did you want to be more Def Leppard, Pyromania? Did you want to be more Dio, whatever the album was at that time? What were you trying to be?
We just wanted two guys that looked like us more than anything. It wasn't the sound, because there were plenty of people that came down and kicked ass behind the drum kit or great bass players. But, one guy was a butcher and the other guy worked construction. And Vito and I had always said, man, to be in this band, you can't have a job. You have to, you have to almost live at home, so you don't have any sort of like obligation or rent obligation. So you basically broke, but living at home, so you could dedicate your life to this. And this is 1983. I was born in 61, so I must have been 22 years old. And Vito was the same. And I was living with our manager. Vito was living at home. We had no money, but we had 24 hours availability to play rock and roll. And that's the kind of guys we wanted. And we also wanted the guys to look like they, were in Motley Crue or Van Halen or something like that. And we couldn't find anyone in New York like that. At least it didn't come to our audition,
No, you should have gone over to LA. All right, let me get quickly over here to Pride. And I don't want to talk about the Pride album as much as I want to talk about the touring cycle with Pride. You head out with ACCDC, Aerosmith, Ozzy, Kiss, Ace Frehley, which remarkably are all still touring in 2020, by the way.
You just reverse it. We started with Ace Frehley,
right?
Then we went to Kiss, then we went to Aerosmith, then we went to ACCDC.
Yes. I was just sort of doing it alphabetically, I guess. But okay, talk to me about working with Frehley's Comet and opening for them, because the story of that band, as told by the band members, was that Ace was a complete F-up, and they should have blown up and been the next big thing. They were opening for Iron Maiden, and just bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. What was your experience like? Was that tour a great, fun tour and everybody was happy, or was it just a gigantic mess and you couldn't wait to get off of it?
No, quite the opposite. The tour was a great tour for us. Ace Frehley was Ace Frehley. Yes, Ace Frehley, he at that time liked to drink and stuff like that. We became really good friends with him. Vito became even closer friend with him. He invited Vito up almost every night to play with him at the end of the show. The show was good. The band was good. There weren't the tour was not a mess. Some of the guys in that band should have worked in an office, but Ace was the true rock and roll all the way. And we enjoyed watching that. He was nice to us. The crew was semi-nice to us too and stuff like that. Everything went really well. It did really well for us.
You mentioned that a couple of the guys should have worked in an office. How important was the whole image for you back then? You said you wanted a couple of guys in White Lion that looked like you, so you sort of wanted, good-looking people to be in the band. Was that as important as the chops? Because you look at John Regan in Frehley's Comet, guy plays like a monster. He spent 30 years with Peter Frampton. You can't deny his talent, but you're right. He's not a sexy pinup boy.
Well, I mean, in that
no
case,
offense.
I wasn't referring to the look. I was just really referring to their attitude towards how they go on stage. This is more a job, and I get a paycheck. I also don't think that Ace really fits into the White Lion and Motley Crue world, where they're a poster band in that way. But there's no doubt, and I don't think that White Lion created this. Of course, we didn't create that, but it just sort of was that a band had to look good, and a band had to also to show that they fitted together. I mean, I keep mentioning Motley Crue. Motley Crue is not one of my favorite bands, and musically they are what they are, but their concept and their image, especially on the two first album, is phenomenal for what that band stood for on the time. So I think a lot of us molded us around that. You couldn't suddenly have someone that maybe stood out in the wrong way in the photo.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to ask you this. You did Mabel, you did the Eurovision contest. Your career in the 70s and early 80s from Denmark was going okay, I guess. How important was this move to New York and this move into White Line? Did you see it as just another band, or did you see that as if I don't make it now, I might have to go work at the post office in Aarhus?
That was never an option. Me coming to New York was also me saying I will never return to my home country.
Okay.
For almost 20 years, I just lived with the hatred towards how I felt leaving it. So there were nothing that I was not willing to do just to remain in the U.S. and continued playing rock and roll. It's as simple as that.
So if White Lion had failed, you would have just found some other project.
From the second I touched ground in New York, I was more at home than I've ever been. And every time I'm in the U.S., I'm more at home than I am anywhere else. I left the U.S. and moved to Australia at the end of '99. And I very often regretted. There were a lot of different things going on in my life. I had just become a father for the first time. Music was changing. The industry was changing. But whenever I remember arriving in New York in '82 with my first band, and the almost 20 years I spent that, they're the greatest time in my life. I miss it every single day, which is why I constantly come back and tour and enjoy as much of old-fashioned America as I can. I soak up down home America as much as I can.
Why did you leave Denmark with such a bitter taste in your mouth? I mean, it's our family's Danish. I've been to Denmark many times. We spent our summers there. It always seems very nice. What was it about it? Was it just the business opportunities weren't good? You didn't like the government? Why did you leave the wonderful, beautiful Denmark with such a acrimonious view on life?
Hey, what is this, Barry Sanders?
It's the Barry Sanders show.
Bernie Sanders. No, I mean, you got to realize I came into my first band at age 15 with no plan of ever being in music. And I never got a chance to think about it twice before I was so involved in it. And when in 1978, with only one TV channel and only one national radio station in Denmark, we win the Danish version of the Eurovision Song Contest. 99% of the entire population of the country were watching, and it had an impact. And I don't think that everyone involved, everybody knew really what was going to happen there. So sort of when I started getting the taste of we have a very, very outspoken press here in Denmark, and one day they love you and the next day they'll tear you down and stuff like that. Now, it did not affect the three other guys because they were almost 10 years older than me, but I was only 17, and the world hadn't had Simon Cowell and X Factor or American Idol or internet and stuff like that. I was just a kid, and it had an enormous impact on me. I was probably the first guy in Denmark with bleached blonde hair, and so many things. So I couldn't wait to get away from there, and it took me decades. And still today, when I'm sort of at times in and out of Denmark, I still don't live here. I come here at times to create and things like that. I still don't. There's still so much I don't understand about it, and sometimes I go meet with old friends from when I was a kid, and even people that were part of raising me, and trying to find out if something went wrong somewhere along the road.
Oh, hey, it's a gorgeous place. But all right, let me finish with this. We're reaching 40 minutes, so let me get over to main attraction. Le Dernier album, the last one. It didn't sort of set the world on fire. I remember as a fan thinking, it's somewhat different than Pride. It's somewhat different than Big Game. It seemed, I don't want to say it seemed more experimental, but it just seemed as though, some of those songs were getting longer and stuffier. No disrespect. I kind of like the 3-minute pop song, and you went 8 minutes. I'm looking at 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Talk to me about putting that one together and making these sort of statement songs.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same story over and over. That Pride we'd been on the road on the Pride tour for almost 2 years. And the album had basically been active on Billboard's top 200 for 2 years. And we get off the road, and 2 years had gone basically almost gone by since the album came out. But we were just completely burned out and playing the same songs every night and so and so. But the record company is an industry, it's a factory, it's a machine. And together with our management, they kind of like push us that, a new album has to be out by the summer or you're not in the game or something. I can't really remember the words or if the words were spoken, but it put enough, confusion in.
Now, just quickly, are you talking about Big Game or are you talking about Main Attraction?
No, I will get to Main Attraction. Gotcha. Because it was that we should not have been doing Big Game at the time we did. Gotcha. Big Game. Gotcha. We needed a long, long break, but instead, and Vito and I had not been writing on the road. I mean, Vito plays guitar for 3 or 4 hours every day, and I probably was shopping in the mall for hairspray or something like that. I can't remember. It was before I started shopping for power tools. So Main Attraction becomes basically a rescue mission from what Big Game did not end up being, in our opinion. They're great songs, but it's an unfinished album. We didn't have enough time, Vito and I, including working with Greg and James in the rehearsal studio. We didn't have enough time living with the songs and everything, and a lot of stuff happened in the studio, all positive stuff, but stuff that threw us away from focusing on the album. And like you said about 5 hours ago when we started this interview, we did not have that very strong A&R guy that could come out to the studio and say, you guys are on the wrong track. We need to pull back and regroup, concentrate. The album is going in the wrong direction. And it's no blame on Michael Wagner, one of my best friends as producer. It was just a situation. We had a lot of money at that time. We probably spent more time, fixing our Harleys and our Corvettes and stuff like that we really were sitting down talking about the album. Hence, that when Vito and I then sit down to write Main Attraction, we have disappointment, we have anger, we have stubbornness, that we want to write that. So, which is why, that album is going in that direction. But it's also that White Lion was never going to go, as much as I've mentioned them today, Motley Crue or the Poison Way. And you can hear that already at the Fight to Survive album. You can hear it definitely on the Pride album. And you can also find traces on the Big Game album. Yes, the hair almost look identical between Bret Michaels and Vince Neil or whatever, but that's where it stops. We wanted to go somewhere else with the music. So you could even say that Vito and I were probably going closer to wanting to go in the direction of a Journey, a bigger sounding band, more serious keyboard and bigger songs and more, kind of like early prog without going too much that way.
So do you think if you had, after Pride, given the time, you see Big Gain as main attraction as one album instead of two, in the sense that had you waited and just made one really good album instead of two sort of lesser good? I mean, I love these albums, so I hate saying that, but
Vito and I talk about this all the time. I mean, it's not a mystery, and it's just a fact. It's all out there in front of us. Now we have all the answers to how it should be. Main attraction should have been the album we came back with after the Pride success.
It should have been. And then, of course, let me finish with this, mostly because my back is giving out on me, but the last show in Boston, 1991, I guess it was, right?
September 2nd.
September 2nd, 1991, Channel Club,
yeah.
What was that like, going into that, knowing, or first of all, did you know it was going to be the last show? I mean, I'm assuming you did. What was those emotions, knowing that everything you moved to New York, you do Pride twice, you get the right guys for the band, MTV, the tours, the AC, and you get to this moment and you go, it's fucking over. Was it tough? Was it rough? Was it, oh, thank God? Walk me through that night.
Yeah, it actually only just happened a couple of days before the decision, and I don't even know, and I take the full blame, but there is a story behind that. I think maybe two or three shows before that, we were playing in an amusement park, and the power went out, and Vito and I standing behind the back curtain or something like that, and somehow I go to Vito when we play Boston, which also was the last show on the tour. It's going to be the final show, and Vito, in his very own way of being Vito, just say, okay. And I swear to God that we never spoke about that for 20 years. Now, the reason why I said that is also at that moment, I was very disappointed, and it almost had no more contact with our management, our record company, so many different. Greg and James had also left the band, and we had two new guys in, and we were just going out in America on a large club to test it out. So I basically felt that the record company had failed us. I've told the story a million times. We came into New York, had a big sold out show. Nobody from the record company shows up. I went up to the record company the next day. The receptionist didn't recognize me when I asked for one of the bigger chiefs up there, and I says, and she says, I don't think he's there. I says, you know what? You tell him Sebastian Bach is here. And the guy came out, and I just realized there's a new kid in town. And, I mean, it's a little bit childish, but I took it upon myself saying, they don't give a rat's ass anymore. So all that on top of everything else, also having money in the bank, thinking that this, you have the power to go on for another 30 years, made it easy to make that decision. But the biggest surprise is that next day when I flew back to LA, Vito flew to New York, we didn't get the call from the management. We didn't get the call from the record company. We didn't get the call from the T-shirt company. We didn't get a call from the publishing company. All people that were making money from us. We had like Italian managers, all the Tony Soprano. They usually called us up and say, I'm going to come slap you around, And I was expecting that kind of call Monday morning. But instead, there were just silence.
That's unbelievable. Nobody called. Nobody said, hey, wait a minute. What do you mean last show? What the fuck are you doing? Hey. They just went, all right. Really?
I'm also kind of surprised that a week later, Vito didn't call me and say, hey, man, let's talk about it. But this is classic Mike Tramp and Vito Bratta. We never spoke about those things before it was too late.
Did Jimmy DeGrasso phone and say, hey, I like this gig. Can I please don't? No, so all right, boy, I said I was going to, but was there an anger in that you've done all of this stuff, you've done all this touring, you've done all this business, you've made millions of dollars for all kinds of people, and on the very last day, you take the ball and go home, and nobody says, hey, wait, they just went, yeah, fuck him. And it just ended like that? I mean, that's tragic.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things. I don't know how to really explain it, but the facts are, on the way back to LA on that plane, I already created the concept and the name for Freak of Nature. By the time I came back to LA, I'd already talked to one of my friends in Denmark, a guitar player, and he was already in LA a week later, and we started working on the creation of Freak of Nature. I've always been a guy, who hit the ground running. I already had the wheels in motion. So I was driven by that new energy, and now I'm going to do it my way. And not that White Line wasn't my way. I mean, it's just one of those things. And now when you look back, again, the signs are on the wall, but, at the same time, when nobody is willing to fight for you, who at the same time is happy taking the 20% commission, then it's not meant to be.
And you did the right thing. You fought to survive. You've got to fight to survive. And listen,
it's incredible that the first album is basically the title of your life after that.
Yeah, it's your motto. There you go. On that, at 46 minutes, we will say merci. We will do maybe a part 2, but we'll definitely do something at the M3 festival. Toujours un plaisir, as we say in Montreal. Always a pleasure. Merci.
Sure, and always happy to be able to inform people out there. And this time I can say, when people ask me or ask people, is he playing any White Lion?
The answer is yes.
He's playing only White Lion.
That's perfect. Thank you, sir.
You got it, bro.
Let me see if
it just came in the mail.
Second time around. Yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on that. I was sent a stream to listen, but I gotta have physical. I mean, if you look at this, I just got piles and piles. I mean, if it ain't
because we're people that still feel music is also something physical, something you have to hold in your hands.
Well, and I'll say this on that point is, I just look at my musical knowledge or the way it developed. I sat in the living room of our house and I saw my brother's Kiss records and I saw my mom's ABBA records and I touched them and I looked at them and I went, what's this image? And I put them on and I listened. Some I liked, some I didn't. And I'm just thinking that nowadays with people, like my daughter can't pass on anything to my son because he can't shuffle through her phone because there's just nothing. So I think we lose that. And I know it's, you're old. I know, but I think there's a certain something about tangible and touching and holding and feeling and
yeah.
Anyway, sir.
I wonder how your life would have turned out if you'd chosen to follow ABBA instead of Kiss.
I would have sent up an SOS. Let me tell you. All right.
Get him free.
All right. Hold on. Let me call you right back in a second. I just want to end this tape.
Okay.